Literally everything happens for a reason, okay? And I know that sometimes when you're in your hardest times, you can't see it. You're frustrated, you're sad, you're depressed, you're anxious. And sometimes you'll find yourself asking, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why is God or the universe doing this to me? Why are they talking to me like this? Why are they treating me like this? And I need you to hear me loudly and clearly. I promise you, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. You guys, if you're new to the channel, if you didn't know, I had a 9 to 5 that I absolutely hated. And that was by far the most traumatizing. I was there for 6 years. That was probably the most traumatizing 6 years of my life, right? And the reason why that job was so difficult for me was because I was battling with who my family wanted me to be. You know, I was first generation college graduate. I got this decent slash high paying job, and this was back in 2014 before inflation. I was making about 60,000 a year before overtime. So, being not having any children, being 23, 24 years old, making that type of money in 2014, like that was solid income, right? So I was battling with that versus what I really wanted to do, which was run my own business. And that was my first full-time job. And, I was just so proud of myself that I made it, but I hated it. I hated it because I hated management and the way they treated me. I felt like, there was injustice. I felt like because I was the youngest one in that department, and I worked with all women, right? And I'm not going to sit here and say that I didn't do anything to cause the mistreatment, right? I had a mouth on me back in the day, okay? And so, I was just miserable there. I had all these bills that I had opened up, which is my fault, right? I should have learned how to manage my money better, of course. But because I had all those things going wrong, I hated being there, and I couldn't find another job that was going to pay me what I was making. And even if I did find a job that was paying more, I didn't get the job, right? I might have applied to it, might have even had an interview, but they went with someone else. So I just felt trapped. And I lived like that for 6 years. And for those whole 6 years, I just could not understand why this was happening to me. Why do I have this job that I absolutely hate? I feel like God is punishing me for something. I'm miserable here. I just don't see a way out. I want to run my own business, but I don't know what kind of business to run. It was terrible. It was terrible. But being there for 6 years molded me into the woman that I am today. I believe that because I worked there for so long and I was miserable there for pretty much the entire time, it forced me to appreciate the life that I built for myself today, which is running my own business, finally getting to a point in my life where I have genuine peace, where I'm not stressing about bills. I learned that a lot of the financial problems that I had during those years was a direct correlation of my lack of knowing how to spend money. Okay. I was just balling out of control. I, financed a car that was more expensive than what I should have been financing at that time. I had credit cards, and I'd never made that much money before. I didn't know financial literacy back then. And so all of that was my fault. And here I am now. I know what happens when you're stressing about money, right? You're miserable, you're stressed, you feel trapped, you can't be creative, you can't be productive, you can't live in your feminine because you're so worried about bills. And because I had already experienced that, well, now I know what not to do. I also believe that God put me through that because it forced me to work even harder. I've told you guys in other videos, I feel like sometimes something happens in your life that pushes you to do more. And because I hated that job so much, I feel like my drive in my business is just 10 times harder because I never, ever, ever want to go back to that, right? I think that if I had a decent experience at that job and, maybe it wasn't the worst place in the world, maybe if I did get along with management, maybe I wouldn't be as inclined to bust my ass in my business because if my business failed, having a job isn't so bad, right? That would be my mindset. But because having that job, or honestly, any job that I had, I was miserable at, that wasn't the only one. And it's fair to say that I was probably the problem. But because I never had a good experience at a job, I believe that's why I work so much harder now. Because I never want to go back to a job. Now, if I have to, of course, I'm not above the program. I don't have too much pride, but I really do believe that, because I hated my job so much and I remember being depressed, I remember being miserable, it just forces me to work even harder. That's why I push out so much content. That's why I'm always trying new things and seeing what works, learning from it, spending pretty much my entire day, every single day for years, working on my business. Something else too that I feel like that job just really taught me was just how to be a better person. That job taught me patience. A lot of things taught me patience. Weight loss taught me patience. Being an entrepreneur taught me patience. But that job taught me patience too, because being so young and getting that job, I didn't realize I was naive in my early 20s. I was very sheltered growing up, and I just had this naive outlook on life. I might still have that naive outlook, I'm not going to lie. But I didn't realize how catty and how petty some women can be. I didn't realize back then that, people can smile in your face but talk about you behind your back. I didn't know all of these things back then, right? I had to learn patience. I had to learn that even though someone may act a certain way, it doesn't necessarily mean that's who they are as a person. Sometimes people are in survival mode. They're doing the only thing they know how to do. They're just trying to survive the day. They're just trying to play the corporate ladder, whatever you want to call it. But it taught me patience because it taught me, even though this person at work might have, done something that I didn't necessarily agree with, one, I don't write them off as a bad person, but two, I can still be cordial to them. I don't have to like someone to be kind to them, right? Because that's who I am. I don't allow people to change who I am, right? I think that's what I'm trying to say. So, even though I was miserable there, even though I felt like people might have been quote unquote tattletelling at that job when it came to me, I didn't allow that job to keep me from being who I am, which is I genuinely am a high energy person. I genuinely do have a smile on my face most of the time. I am a kind person. I used to be a nice person, but I've changed that. I am a kind person, right? I still know how to treat people with respect. That job taught me that, and I don't think I would have learned that lesson if I didn't go through those times. If you've worked in a corporate job or a job with all women, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's not really the job that makes your day miserable, it's the people at the job that makes your job miserable. And so it pushes your patience, it forces you to, because you have to have mental strength in order to get through it. Otherwise, you won't make it through your 8-hour shift or your 12-hour shift, right? It's a lot of patience that is learned when you work those type of jobs. And because I went through that for 6 years, I do believe that's why I believe partially that's why I'm as patient as I am today. That job taught me a lot. And, reflecting back on it, I've had my own full-time business now for 6 years. I'm I'm happy that I went through that experience. I wish I knew back then what I know now. I also used to live in fear back then. I was so afraid to stand up to myself. Stand up for myself. I was afraid to go to HR because I was afraid of losing my job. I was afraid that I wouldn't find something better. I was afraid that you know, I wouldn't have the ability to figure things out. And that was all fear based. Now I don't live in fear. I know that I am more than capable of figuring stuff out. If something goes awry, I know how to figure it out, right? I've taught myself that, you know, it may feel like things can't get any worse, but it always can. That's number one. And then two, I am who I am. I am her, right? I know how to pull myself out of really bad situations. I know how to stay mentally strong. I know how to keep going even when things don't go the way I want. And I feel like that job really taught me that. So if you're going through anything and you feel like, why is this happening to me? I promise you it's happening for you, and it is molding you into a better version of yourself. Yeah. It really is. And you may not see it today, but I promise you, when you reflect back, once you get yourself out of whatever you're going through, you will see it. Leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. I cannot wait to read what you have to say. Also, you guys make sure you join the Patreon. The link is down below in my description. Subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.